and players mobbing.
But Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jason Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast. I'm your host, Sherrod Blakely, joined by special guest for a repeat performance backed by popular demand. My man, Law Murray of The Athletic covers the Los Angeles Clippers. Law, what's going on with you?
I'm shout out to the popular demand. I'll tell you that much. It's good to see you. I wish I was on the East Coast now. I know the Clippers are in Boston, and so I'm sad to miss that game, but looking forward to covering the rest of the road trip for sure.
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to just hope things work out and that you trust the process. Shout out to Law's hometown Philly, the trust the process reference. He's not a Sixers fan, folks, so don't start tripping. But what he is a close observer of this Clippers team, which is they come into Boston having won 3 in a row, 8 of the last 10, playing really, really, really good basketball. They're only a couple games, maybe 2.5 out of first in the West, which to me is kind of crazy because just like a month or so ago, we weren't even sure if this team would even be like playoff caliber squad. And now they are rolling. What's been the key to this team kind of getting it going and sustaining the success?
Well, it's pretty much what we talked about last time. Guys are healthy and guys know their roles. And when you have those two things with the talent that is on this team, everyone is just playing extremely well with the urgency that comes with the stages of their respective careers, where they've been the last few years as far as injuries, or in James Harden's case, just being in dysfunctional situations or situations that feel dysfunctional after a while. And they're maximizing it. It's really simple basketball. There you can make shots better than the teams that they're facing. And they have maintained that over 2 months. And as you know, Sherrod, between the time the playoffs start and the time the playoffs end, that's about 2 months. So if you can do it at this time of the year, then they're going to be in a situation where you have to consider them contenders. And that's pretty much it. They went through their difficult period right away in November. They were the second to last team to win a game in the entire league in the month of November from the time November started. And that's significant because November 1 is when the Harden trade was completed. But ever since November 17th, they have literally been the best team in the NBA as far as record-wise.
Yeah, they have definitely been balling. I think people forget how tough a start it was for the Clippers this year, particularly when you look at road success. I mean, if you don't know the kind of the backstory to the Clippers, you look at their road record, I think it's 9-10, and think like, oh, they're a bad road team. But then you start breaking it down, you realize those 10 losses, they lost like 5 or 6 of them right out the gate. So what's been the key to them being able to go into other people's buildings and just handle their business the way they've been able to do like the last month and a half?
They're vets. This is a veteran team. They have seen the success as a collective. And at that point, it's just about locking in. I was with them in Phoenix. There's a lot of chatter going on about what happened in the playoffs and the Devin Booker, Paul George back and forth, which it's not really a back and forth as far as Paul is concerned, but he's in. It takes 2.
We don't make that back and forth because that's what we do.
Exactly. And Paul knows that, which is why Paul's mute about it right now. But what really shuts people up is when you perform, and they did that. Paul had damn near 20 points in that first quarter in Phoenix to start this month. They go to New Orleans, a place that they hadn't won in 4 years. And they didn't just win, but they won convincingly against a New Orleans Pelicans team that is playing well now. And I remember the game that the Pelicans played after the Clippers blew them out in their building, and they went and embarrassed the Kings. They went and took that out on another team in their building. And like the Clippers are starting to play better teams and starting to win some of those games. They lost to the Thunder in December. they saw him again and they handled their business. Kawhi got healthy, and Kawhi is playing like one of the best players in the league. He's an MVP candidate. We're not going to talk about him like an MVP candidate, I guess, because everyone's going to be like, well, when's the breakdown coming? Or Kawhi, he just got a triple-double, and it was his first triple-double in 4 years, and people hold that stuff against him. Like, he doesn't have MVP numbers compared to the guys who are going to be considered heavily to win the award. But his impact is that of an MVP. And that, I mean, that's where it starts. It starts with him, and then you got incredible talent, coaching that is putting guys in position to succeed, and they know that they need to stay together. They have the perspective because of where they've been and where they're trying to go.
Talk a little bit more about Kawhi, because he has been that one guy that we find ourselves at the end of the season playing if only if ... And he's one of the names at the top of that list. If only Kawhi could stay healthy, if only Kawhi wasn't, the Marshall of Load Management University. If only he wasn't I don't think people really, because he's on the West Coast, they don't realize that dude has been flirting with a 50, 40, 90 season all year.
Right.
He's been that impactful across the board. How much do you think the NBA putting games played into the matrix for getting postseason worth, how much do you think that has impacted the decisions that the Clippers have made as far as load managing Kawhi? Because he's playing more games now than we've seen in a while. Maybe going all the way back when he was a Spur.
I can tell you, Sherrod, that the player participation policy of 2023 had absolutely no impact on how the Clippers were going to approach this season and how Kawhi Leonard was going to approach that season. When we were together on Media Day, right before flying to Hawaii, Kawhi was asked about that very thing. And Kawhi came out as strongly as I remember him pushing back on anything in his career, especially since he's been in LA, about how the NBA, and people who cover the NBA, people who create the narratives, if they were doing that to mock him, and those are his words, not mine, not my paraphrase or interpretation. If they are mocking him for him being injured, they need to stop. That's what he said on October 2nd. And then we fly to Hawaii, and he's been about that action. He's been healthy. That's really it. Like, he was coming off a torn ACL last year. That's why he didn't play back-to-backs. That's why it was a weird season for him. It wasn't his only injury. He dealt with an ankle sprain that cost him a couple weeks. And then in the playoffs, after a great game one, he had a torn meniscus and he couldn't finish the series. It's all about Kawhi. Just is he healthy? He hasn't been healthy in several years, but he's healthy right now. And that's all you can really worry about. Everyone knows, oh, you might get hurt, or this has been what's happened the last few years. And that's frustrating, Sherrod. It's frustrating if you're that player. It's frustrating if you're that player's teammates. It's frustrating if you're Tyronn Lue, who has to figure out who to put on the floor on a nightly basis. That was frustrating last year. But that frustration from last year has created an environment this year where they are going to compete. They are going to play back-to-backs. They are going to not take games for granted. They are trying to get the number one seed. Why? Because you can't win a championship in January. You can't win it in November. You can't win it in December. But you can build those habits so that when the time comes for you to try and win it, you're prepared and you're in that position. And no one knows that better than Kawhi Leonard, a two-time Finals MVP.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
And the thing that, with Kawhi that I've noticed, not only the games increase, but also just you start looking at the numbers and you realize he's playing more minutes now than he's ever played before. He's shooting the ball better, pretty much every metric that you can have. And the scoring, he's averaging about 24 points a game, which when you're playing with a dynamic scorer like Paul George and James Harden and Russell Westbrook, if you're missing one bucket per game, scoring wise, you're still doing pretty good. And again, he's much more efficient this year. The other guy I wanted to hit you up with, Murray, about is Paul George. Paul, you're around him more than I am, obviously, but he seems like such I don't understand why he's such a polarizing figure. It's like you look at his numbers, you look at the work he puts in, and they're great numbers, and you get the sense that people are like, what else you going to do, Paul? Why can't you do this? Or why aren't you doing more of that? And you start, again, like your teammate, Kawhi Leonard, he too was kind of flirting with the 50-40-90 game. He shoots about 47 from the field, about 40 plus from three-point range, and better than 90 from the free throw. What is it about Paul George that people who aren't around him should understand about why he's a good player? Because I do think that there's people don't quite get why he is who he is. What do people need to know about Paul George they don't?
I mean, that dude is all the next generation's favorite player, man. They love Paul George in a way that I guess, I really feel like the disrespect is Lakers oriented. I think people wanted him to do things, and Paul just had a different path for himself. And Paul's a little bit more open about his thought process than, well, especially comparing it to Kawhi, but that's like a low bar to clear, I guess. But Paul is thoughtful, and you know how it is in the media. Like when you share more of yourself, that kind of exposes you more. It makes you more vulnerable. And that has opened Paul George up to criticisms, a lot of it undue. People forget that he was a young player leading the Pacers to consecutive conference finals appearances and going up and really challenging that Miami Heat team that wound up winning championships. Like, people think that Paul George is the player who failed in the playoffs in Oklahoma City or failed in the bubble, not the player that came back from a broken leg to be even a more skilled version of the player that he was when he came into the league, or the player with the Clippers who, like Tyronn Lue made him play point guard. But now that he's playing with a legitimate pass first point guard, really two of them, in James Harden and Russell Westbrook in the second unit, it allows Paul George to be the most efficient version of himself. He's getting more catch shoots. He's playing off the ball more, coming off screens. It's like in the past, we would watch the Clippers, and it was guys like Landry Shamet, Luke Kennard, who had to run those options. Well, now you have literally Paul George doing that stuff. And Paul, hey, it turns out he has role player talent just like he has star player talent. He wants to play both ends of the floor. And he's knowledgeable enough of his career and other guys' careers where he understands where he fits best at this stage. He can't handle bringing the ball up on every possession and getting hounded by Drew Holiday's, that type. But what he can handle is being a 6'8" sniper. And so it makes the game easier. And people just have to understand, he's not Kawhi, but he's not that far a step from Kawhi. And in a lot of ways, Paul's ability to shoot the basketball from so many different angles, that's what is defining this Clippers offense even more than what Kawhi is doing.
Yeah, and to me, you just look at the overall skill set that he brings to the table. You look at the impact, and I want to be clear when I ask you this question that I'm not saying that these two sets are identical, but do you see parallels between the way that Kawhi and Paul George have to work in concert with each other, and Tatum and Jaylen Brown for the Celtics having to work? Because it seems they're all the two groups are different types of players, but it seems that there's always questions about whether they can work well together and things like that. And yet, when they're healthy, both sets are pretty damn good.
Yeah, those are the players that the league wants to build around. And I feel like you hear a lot of the chatter because it makes it easier on everybody else if those guys are broken up. And I asked Paul, it's like, you guys haven't had the success. So why are you and Kawhi so why do y'all get along so well? It's not like you guys are shooting commercials together, or it's something new every week where you guys do something funny or viral, like when Bron and Wade were playing in Miami together. You guys are on year 5. You haven't played in a conference finals together. Paul's played in one, and Kawhi was dealing with the ACL tear. Like, how does that tandem stay together? And Paul was like, there's no egos. We generally like each other. It helps that they're very good, but they have a maturity about them, which allows them to keep the BS to a minimum while they're trying to achieve this pressurized goal. It's the same thing in Boston. Like, I remember the first half of Ime Udoka's season in Boston, and people wanted those guys broken up because they had nothing better to do, I guess, in Boston. But then you saw the vision. Like, those dudes made the finals. And even before that and since then, how many conference finals have they played in together as young players, as guys who've never experienced playing for another team, never experienced what it's like to have to, really be a role player? Like, I know Tatum and Brown got to start their careers with guys like Isaiah Thomas and Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. But at the same time, those guys were top 3 picks on teams that were not top 3 pick quality. You know what I'm saying? Like, these dudes stole picks. Look, and legal. We're not talking about the 80s, like how, the Lakers got the number 1 pick after winning a chip, or how, God bless his soul, but, the Celtics number 2 pick after, they won a chip, right? Len Bias, like, that would have changed everything in Boston if Len was still here. So, like, people see guys, and when they see them fail even a little bit, then they want to see if they can break them up. But, like, there's a reason the Celtics are at the top of the standings year in and year out with Tatum and Brown on the team. And you haven't seen that with the Clippers because those guys, Kawhi and Paul, have been hurt, but now they're not. And you see the level that they're playing at. It's the level they've always played at when they're both on the floor together.
Yeah. And one guy that plays a role in Clipper success, and full disclosure, I've known him for a really, really long time, and I've always saw the potential
because he's that dude. That's why I know exactly who you're talking about.
I'm talking about my boy Ty Lue.
I was not. I thought you were going to bring up Terance.
I'm going to talk about Terance in a minute. Terance, that's my guy.
That's my guy.
Been down with T-Man even when he was back rocking with the Seminoles. And they had, like, athlete after athlete after athlete on that squad. But the thing about Ty Lue, I think he's so underrated because everywhere he's been from a head coaching standpoint, and you go back to his days as a player, he understands how to deal with stars in ways that very few people fully understand and appreciate. That's why with him being a Clippers coach, it makes so much perfect sense. And for him to have James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, extremely talented, future Hall of Fame type talent, and being able to orchestrate that's impressive. What have you noticed that he's been able to do to keep everybody happy? Because that's the tough thing when you have that kind of talent. Making sure everybody's eating good. Because everybody don't got the same appetite. Some people need to eat a little bit more than others. How has he been able to kind of keep everybody essentially happy?
I've been around Tyronn Lue ever since I took the job at The Athletic. We never met before. And so everything I knew about Tyronn Lue before that, remember, I'm from Philly. I was in 8th grade when AI stepped over him. Okay. And T. Lue called me out for that the first time we talked. It's like, I know where you're from. I know, and that's the thing with T. Lue. He knows his guys. He knows who he's around, whether you're a player, whether you're a coach, whether you're on the traveling party. Like, Tyronn knows he knows who you are. There's a bunch of dudes in the NBA he's never coached that he has a great relationship with. And you just are like surprised every time someone comes to the Clippers. They're like, yeah, I already knew T. Lue. And I think that is the quality in coaches. That's the quality that if you're covering the NBA, you have to understand what you know is one thing. Who you know and how you're able to relate to them consistently is the primary job of a head coach to me in the NBA. It's not college. It's not, you're not the authoritarian. It's not your way or the highway, but you do need to tap into that occasionally. But what you really need to do is you need to give access and you need to support your guys on the court as well as in general. It's a long season. That's what Tyronn Lue, that's what makes him special. The fact of the matter is he has an old team, a veteran team, a team with multiple Hall of Famers, and he's able to reach them effectively, consistently. He's able to put them in position on the floor so those guys buy in, but he's also able to hold them accountable in ways that you don't always get. We're seeing it. How many coaches have lost their jobs this week? Head coaches in the NBA, right?
I stopped counting.
Right. And it's like those situations in Milwaukee and Washington on the court, completely different sides of the spectrum. But the core of why both of those guys are not running their teams anymore comes down to accountability. It comes down to the relationships. It comes down to, and one relationship was better than the other. Obviously, Wes Unseld Jr., he's still in the organization because he has he's got legacy in that city. His dad is literally royalty there. Like, you're not going to just...
He pulled the Brad Stevens. On that one, which
yeah.
Much respect.
But with Wes, it came down to those dudes didn't play hard and they weren't held accountable. And you saw it in their record and you saw it in how they were progressing over the course of the season. Adrian Griffin won 30 games. But
had the third best record in the NBA.
Right, but, it was clear that he didn't have his locker room, right? Tyronn Lue, I thought last year was not a good year for Tyronn, but he's bounced back from that. And he's reestablished who he always has been. The guy who he was as an assistant, the guy he was when he first got the head coaching job with the Clippers, the guy he was in Cleveland. And I'm sure the guy that you got to know in Boston. And that is a quality where I think it's easy to identify people who know basketball. There's a lot of people who know basketball. There is a significantly smaller percentage of those same people who can reach a wide variety of the players that you need to succeed as a head coach, as a basketball team. And that's what makes Tyronn Lue special.
Yeah, I saw just firsthand his ability to not just hold accountable, but just actually to challenge the Kevin Garnett's, the Paul Pierce's of the world, guys that because of all they've done as an assistant coach. You're not going to just go roll up on them and just say, you're not going to speak your piece just to speak your piece. You got to have a certain comfort level with them and establishment with them in order to do that. And he definitely has that. And you mentioned my other guy that I think a lot about when I think about the Clippers, Terance Mann. And again, this is just me, but I hate the way things have played out for him because I think he's so much better of a player than the role that they need him to play. And I'm just curious. I mean, you've been around him for a while now. How is he handling this role? Because he knows in his heart of hearts that there's more that he can do on the floor than what he's doing now. But I think he's kind of embraced the fact that that's not necessarily what the team needs for me to help the team.
I think few players have had to adjust more than Terance Mann on the Clippers over the last, I would say not just this year, last year included. I think that Terance is asked to play every position, but he's also asked to do it in a way that supports everybody else. And that is hard. It's hard enough when you come into the league, how Terance came into the league. Like, he had to do the G League elite camp. Right. He had to be a second round pick. He had to play in the G League. He had to, you all had to get through the pandemic, but he wasn't playing for Doc, right? Doc would throw him into games at the end of quarters and that's it. He had to go from being a third stringer in Tyronn Lue's first training camp to literally being the biggest reason why that franchise made their first conference finals, hitting 37 points. So you're thinking, Terance is going to be a star now. Like, he scored all these points on national television and biggest one of the franchise. And it's like, no, you're still in the second unit. You're going to be the point guard. Russell Westbrook's available. You're back in the second unit and you're off the ball completely. This year, he won the starting job coming out of camp, sprains his ankle. By the time he gets healthy, it's a completely different team because they made the trade to get James Harden. And also, you're coming off the bench again. Oh, we got to switch things up because we've lost 6 games in a row. Terance, you're starting again, mainly because we need you to defend the hardest guy to defend in the other team's starting lineup on the perimeter. And we need you to be off the ball so that James can cook. because if you start Russell Westbrook, you got to find touches for 4 guys as part of your primary lineup. That was untenable. Yeah. Terance has answered the bell, and he answered the bell while being hurt. He came back. You know how it is in the NBA, Sherrod. You don't play because, you're 100%. You play because the team and you have decided you're healthy enough to not get hurt more. So there you go. So, yeah, Terance made his debut in November, but I don't think he's felt himself until this month in January. And it's reflected in his jump shot. He was arguably the worst catch and shoot 3-point shooter in the league over the first month or 2 of the season. But now this month he's shooting that thing like he shot it his whole career. And that matters because you literally have to deal with James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and the center who is catching passes from James Harden more than likely on the roll. You're not thinking about Terance Mann. You're trying to cheat off of. You're putting your small guard on him, or you're putting your. I saw what the Celtics did last month. Probably Terance Mann's, nadir period this season was when the Celtics came to LA and they put guys like, Namias Quato on them just so that they could pack the paint and just completely shut off driving lanes for the Clippers. Like, that's why the Clippers were embarrassed by the Celtics last month. I bet you he ain't going to do that this month. Not the way Terance is playing now. I think that all that speaks to the kind of player Terance is and the kind of worker, the kind of person, the kind of professional Terance Mann is. He deserves a lot of credit for getting himself to this point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been a T-Man fan for a long, long time. But, looking at the success that the Clippers are having now, it's not a 1 or 2 or even 3 person contingent that's leading the way. There's always guys that are contributing, making an impact that we don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to. Who's some of those unsung guys that, are a big part of this success, but may not necessarily get the attention or credit they deserve?
Since we haven't mentioned them, I think Norman Powell he's having a fantastic season. We're talking about one of the best shooters in the NBA. We're talking about one of the most potent bench scorers in the NBA. And we're talking about a guy who's had to change a lot of what he had to do the last couple of years. I mean, we're talking about a player who has won a championship with Kawhi on that Toronto Raptors team. And Norm was there before Kawhi got there, and he was there after. Norm had to go to the bubble as a Raptor. Norm had to go to Tampa as a Raptor because of the coronavirus. He got paid in Portland, and Portland decided that they were going to start him at small forward, even though my guy is 6'3". Right. They were like, we saw you on TV. We're going to have you play the small forward. No, Norm is a guard and not a point guard either. Like, Norm, everyone knows the best version of Norman Powell, and now Norm understands it because last year Norm was like, I want to be an all-star too. I want to start. But now Norman is much more in line with his goals and what the team needs. And it's made Norm a guy who is a legitimate 6 man a year. It's not just that he's scoring and shooting. It's that he is in lineups that are absolutely killing teams. Put Norm in the starting unit with Kawhi, Paul, and James Harden, and that unit is killing teams. So he's a 6 man a year candidate. He's a guy who might get an invite to the 3-point shootout. He is campaigned for it. He wants it. He deserves it. He better be there. And he's played every single game as well. Norm has been nicked up over the last few years, but not this year. He has been rock solid. He's played hurt, but he hasn't missed a single game. I think that he's a guy who he makes the Clippers who they are.
And that is a really, really good team coming into Boston on Saturday. And looking ahead to that game, what are your expectations? Because obviously, the Celtics are the best record in the NBA. Clippers playing some of the best basketball in the NBA. What are you expecting to see when these two collide?
I'm not expecting a great game. I'll tell you that much. I wish the schedule worked out a little bit better. I know the Celtics are coming off of a blowout win in Miami. Don't know if Kristaps Porzingis will be ready because that ankle sprain looked rough. And Porzingis missed the game in December in LA as well. I'm sure the Clippers would have appreciated S being out there, because you want to see how good you are against the teams that are playing as well as you are. And it's a missed opportunity for both teams in that regard. The Clippers have to come from Toronto to go to Boston. That is a tough back-to-back. It's the first game of a 7-game trip in Toronto for the Clippers. So the Celtics game, they'll be acclimated time-wise as far as the time zone goes, but to have to play Boston the second night of a back-to-back coming from Toronto, it's a real disservice. So the scheduling is incredibly unideal. I think that does affect the game. Like I'm not saying guys will miss the game. This isn't last year where, you had to consider, they might sit the first night of a back. No, like that's not happening. Paul is healthy enough to play. Kawhi is healthy enough to play. These guys are playing well, but there's a consideration with the NBA schedule. And so the logistics is unideal. But as far as the game, they're going to compete. And the Clippers, they owe the Celtics one. They did not show up on that matinee Saturday right before Christmas. So however the game Friday night in Toronto goes, there will be a focus, especially with Kawhi playing, because he didn't play in that Celtics game. There will be a focus there to give the Celtics a serious run. The level of competitiveness will be high. I just don't think the quality of the game will be, I'm not going to look at the game and be like, oh, this is what you'll get in the finals. No, I would hope the finals is a lot better than what you get Saturday night.
Yeah, but at this point, we'll take what we can give when it comes to marquee matchups. A chance to see Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden on the floor at the same night. You're going to take that whether it is January or whether we're talking June. No doubt about that.
Absolutely.
Before we go, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, Indeed.com, HelloFresh, and FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of CLNS Media Network, where new customers can get a $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. Don't forget to download this episode and all episodes if you want to. If you want to binge listen to the Big 3 NBA podcast, all your favorite podcast apps. Law Murray of The Athletic, thank you so much for your time, my friend. This was great catching up with you. Hope we can do this again in June. I don't mind making that voyage out west. If we talk in NBA Finals, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that.
Hey, I owe a trip to Boston. I miss all my people up there. I miss seeing you, man. So I wouldn't be mad at that at all.
Absolutely. This is Sherrod Blakely with Law Murray. This is the Big 3 NBA podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful day, folks.